Hello, everybody, and welcome back to I Saw a Bird. So you might notice right off the bat that this episode already looks a little bit different, and we have a quick video that will explain why. So we will play that right now.
Hi, everyone. It's David Ringer. Great to see you all virtually. I did see a bird as well today. Great kiskadees here outside my temporary home in Brownsville, Texas, where I've been for the winter, as our regular viewers know. I'll be heading back north soon, following the birds. So you're noticing already that tonight's show is a little different. We're here to explain that, but let me introduce my good friend and colleague, John Rowden, who many of you will recognize from previous I Saw a Bird segments.
Hey, David. Hey, everybody.
Great to have you, John. So here's the news. After nearly 12 years at the National Audubon Society, I am moving on to my next professional chapter. It's a very bittersweet transition, but I'm excited about what's next. And I'm also really excited about the future for I Saw a Bird. John Rowden is going to be joining Christine as co-host. So we're here to do a transition and make it official. And before we do that handoff, I also want to let everybody know that Elizabeth Sorrell, who's the executive producer for I Saw a Bird, you've never seen her face on camera, but she makes the show everything that it is. She's actually going to be departing as well. She and I will be starting our new professional chapter together. So we want to give a huge thanks and set of appreciations to Elizabeth for everything she's done to make I Saw a Bird all that it is. We started the show a year ago this month as the country went into lockdown against the coronavirus. It's been a very hard year, but I Saw a Bird has been an enormous highlight for me. And that's largely because all of you, our viewers, you've built real community and you've come together during very difficult times around the joy of birds and the joy of community. That has buoyed me through very difficult times. And it's been so great hearing the same from so many of you. So we're excited about the future for I Saw a Bird. John, maybe if I behave myself, you'll have me back as a guest someday. But with that, I've got some ceremonial I Saw a Bird binoculars and I'm going to pass them to you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for everything you've done for Audubon and for I Saw a Bird. It's been such a tremendous pleasure working with you over these years and including on this program, and wish you and Elizabeth all the best and success in your next part of your journey. And I am thrilled. I've been a guest on I Saw a Bird before, and I'm really thrilled to be joining Christine as co-host. So goodbye, David. I can pretty much guarantee we'll have you back in some form or another in the future, but best of luck, and let's get on with the show.
There are a ton of comments coming in already of people thanking David and Elizabeth and saying goodbye. I think it would be an understatement for all of us to say that you will both be missed, but I'm excited for you both to join the viewers for I Saw a Bird. And with that, let's welcome on my colleague and new co-host, Dr. John Rowden. Hey, John.
Hey, Christine. It's really a thrill to be joining you and the I Saw a Bird crew on this. And there are tremendously large shoes to fill, obviously, with David's departure, and big thanks to him and Elizabeth. But I'm really excited to be joining.
Yeah, I'm super excited and honored to have you join us as well. So let's get on with the birds. So I did see a bird recently. I saw a black-crowned night heron while I was out birding in Central Park this past weekend with some folks from Outdoor Afro and Feminist Bird Club. So I literally just lifted up my binoculars and across the pond just looked straight into the eyes of this black-crowned night heron. So that was a really cool sight to see. What about you, John?
It'll take a little getting used to, eh? Yes, I saw a bird today too. I saw an Allen's hummingbird. Actually in my backyard, and Christine, you're familiar, we've done Instagram lives from my backyard. I have a native plant garden, and I took a break between meetings and I went outside and there was an Allen's hummingbird enjoying some nectar from one of the sages we have in the backyard. So it was a great sighting and was thrilled to see that. And I'd love to hear what the viewers are seeing as well. So please drop those, the birds you're seeing in the comment box too.
Yes, we'd love to see what birds you're all seeing, and that's such a cool hummingbird. I love hummingbirds as well, as you can see. And we have a great show lined up for you all today. So first up, we'll be talking all about native plants with our fellow co-host John and some other guests, and we'll be talking about how you can become an advocate for native plants in your own community. Next up, we will explore bird photography ethics with some of Audubon's favorite wildlife photographers. And finally, because we know this is a viewer favorite, we're delighted to play another round of Stump the Expert with Kenn Kaufman, Purbita Saha, and John Rowden again. So for our very first segment, we are very excited to pick the brains of my new co-host, John Rowden, as well as invite on a few other guests. So I'm super happy to welcome on Audubon's Plants for Birds Partnership Manager, Marlene Pantin, as well as the chapter leader of the Mesilla Valley Audubon Society in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Elaine Stachera Simon. And finally, campaigns and policy manager from Audubon, North Carolina, Zach Wallace. So we're going to be talking all about native plants for this segment and how you can advocate for your community and make choices that are better for both birds and people. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you.
It's great to have you all here, and native plants are near and dear to my heart, and so I'm really super psyched to be talking about this. Let's just start with the basics. Why are native plants important to birds? And maybe let's start with you on that, Elaine.
Absolutely. First, I'm so happy to be here talking about native plants especially. If you don't have native plants, you are going to risk ending up with hungry birds, which is a very bad thing, especially during migration. Over the millennia, plants and birds and insects co-evolved locally, and plants are the very foundation of the food chain. When plants native to an area are replaced by those that aren't, you are no longer supporting the insect life and the seeds and nectar that local populations of birds need. And not to mention that native plants have a role in shelter and habitat as well. Here in the Tuolumne Desert, you will not find a cactus wren nesting in an arborvitae, but put a cholla in your backyard and you just might get those cactus wren.
Thank you for those tips, and that's awesome. So a little birdie did tell me that this month, April, is officially Native Plant Month. So John, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We are smack dab in the middle of National Native Plant Month, and this was passed by the US Senate by unanimous consent in March in a bill that was sponsored by Republican Senator Rob Portman of Ohio and Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii. So it was truly a bipartisan effort to actually designate April 2021 as National Native Plant Month. This is about awareness raising. We know that we have more work to do around getting legislation in place that will mandate or recommend the use of native plants, but it's a great opportunity to plug into and to raise awareness about native plants. And speaking of native plants, it's always a good time to show off our native plants database. So I think Marlene is going to walk through a demo of the database, but what we need from the audience is a zip code. Our native plants database is zip code based. All we use is a zip code to search for those native plants. So if somebody could drop a zip code in the chat box, we'll get started on that.
A lot of zip codes.
There's a lot.
All over.
Oh.
It's like a slot machine, the numbers running through there.
All right, we're just gonna pick one. Let's see. Oh, they're literally all coming in so fast. 29455. Let's do that one.
So let's see what we get. So basically, as you've seen, you put your zip code in. The database is pretty simple. You put your database in, your zip code in, and this database comes up, provides you with more information about the best results, the full results, and even a local resources. And as you can see on the page, what you will get is sort of a general description of a plant, the resources here where it says attributes about the best resources that are provided by those plants, and the birds you're likely to attract. And if you want to drill down a bit, you can get more information about the filters in terms of types of plants and so forth. And then definitely you can even email to yourself a list of plants. You can just check that box that said add to your plant list, and you can actually then see that little orange tab that comes out at the bottom, and you can email that to yourself. So the native plant database, you can get a lot of information about native plants. And I think we just want to make sure you understand that you are getting information about the best plants for your local area. And that is how you help to support birds in your community, as well as to support and yourself as well, right? Native plants are not only good for birds and wildlife, they're good for us.
Thanks, Marlene. That's such a cool database. I use that all the time to figure out what new native plants, especially now is spring, which is an awesome time to start doing some new planting. So Marlene, I know you know a little bit about native plant PROs or native plant pros. Could you talk a little bit more about that too?
Sure. So native plant pros are an acronym for proclamations, resolutions, and ordinances. And we at Audubon have been using that as a way to raise awareness and advance the use of native plants, both in your communities at the local level and at the state level. So pros, for example, proclamation is usually a governor or mayor will sign off, and that's very simple. It's ceremonial, but it's a way for people to know more. A resolution is like what John just mentioned, right? We just had Native Plant Month happen at the Senate, and that was a resolution out of the US Senate. And then of course, an ordinance is a law. We know that as much as we love to encourage people to plant native plants, create more native plant habitats, we want to ensure as well that it is enforceable. And that's what an ordinance will do, so that maybe there is required plant use of native plants on state property or on highways and so forth. So that is what a pro is. And right now our network has been working to advance native plant pros wherever they are. So get involved if you're in the public. Sign up at one of your local local chapters as a way to help them to advance native plant pros.
It's awesome. Thanks, Marlene. And as an example, we'd love to ask Elaine to tell us about passing a native plant proclamation in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Absolutely. I was actually watching Marlene and John on the Pro webinar, and it was native plants as being a big initiative of National Audubon was being discussed. And so right when I was watching the webinar, I emailed my acquaintance over at Native Plant Society, our local chapter, and said, hey, do you want to do this? And she said, well, yeah. And off we went. I had done, Mesilla Valley Audubon, we had done a proclamation before. So I already had the template we needed to use. We made sure that when we turned it in, we actually got the proclamation done at both the county, Doñana County, as well as Las Cruces City Council, so the county and the city. We made sure when we turned it in that the county commissioners and city councilors who were sponsoring it didn't need to do any work. It was good to go. We followed the Audubon recommendation of including Indigenous peoples of our area, and I want to mention that was especially appreciated by the city council. That was called out specifically. And we publicized. We set up a couple of radio interviews that were great. John joined me on a couple of our local radio stations, and NPS had a book drawing. We submitted some articles. NPS submitted some articles to the local paper. I got some online things for one of the local publications. And we showed up and just enjoyed hearing what we were doing made official by both the county, Doñana County, and Las Cruces City Council.
That's so cool to hear the behind the scenes of all the work that you're doing, and that's awesome work, so thank you for all of that. So on the other side of the country in North Carolina, there's a proposed law that's called Senate Bill 628, and it's a groundbreaking, no pun intended or pun intended, it's a groundbreaking native plants bill. So Zach, could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me tonight. To take you on a little grassroots journey, Audubon members in North Carolina started working on the local level in about 2015, probably earlier, but the first that I know of, where they were working to pass proclamations and ordinances. And that work, slowly but surely pushed its way up. We saw proclamations from the governor for Native Plants Week. We had events at the governor's mansion. And then over the last General Assembly session, 2 state bills that had a preference for native plants, both on the highway and then anytime, state funds were used. Those are great bills. Senator Bill Rabin, who's working with us on 628, was the sponsor. And, he wanted to take that preference and take it a step further. And so 628 is a requirement that on state property, native plants are used, and that when state funds are used for planting, that native plants are going to be used. And that bill was in its first committee yesterday. We had a lot of fun getting a unanimous vote for that bill, and hearing Republican Senator Rabin talk about it. He loves his native plants. He loves his birds and the animals that depend on it. He also has a distaste for seeing non-natives on state property. My favorite quote from that meeting yesterday was that he had never seen a crepe myrtle that didn't deserve a chainsaw. So we're having a lot of fun in North Carolina.
That's so great. And it's, those relationships that you have with the legislators are so critical, Zach. And, kudos to the entire team in North Carolina for all of that work. And we have a member of 3 chapters in North Carolina on Zoom, Mark, who is congratulating you for your work as well. So how can viewers at home work to help their communities adopt more native plants? I'd like to get both of you to weigh in on that. Maybe Zach first, could you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you should do is reach out to your local Audubon chapter. In North Carolina, we've seen our local folks really push for native plants and other ordinances. Our folks, like at New Hope Audubon in Durham, have set up an advocacy chair and an advocacy committee so that they can work on these issues. We know that there's not an Audubon chapter everywhere. Look for other groups, look for your native plant groups, try to connect, through forums like this, and we're sure you'll find a place that you can get to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great to just spread the love of native plants, because a lot of people don't really know why native plants are so important. And that's exactly why all of you here joining us today is we're all doing the work to do that. So Audubon has a great partnership with Bower and Branch, and that allows people to order native plants right from their own homes. Is that correct, John?
That is correct. We don't want people to not be able to access native plants, don't want that to be a barrier to entry. So we formed a partnership with Bower and Branch, which is a national distribution of, has a national network of growers that they can use to distribute native plants directly to your home or to be picked up at a garden center near you. Their focus area has previously been the eastern part of the country, but we've just now expanded the reach across the entire country. So you can find plants that meet our standards of being raised without pesticides and being locally sourced at Bower and Branch if you don't have local sources of native plants of your own.
Cool. So we've dropped a link to that in the comments, and we'll also share a link to our cool resource page on native plants where you can enter in your own zip code if we missed one of yours in the comments as well. So with that, thank you all of you for joining this segment, and thank you for doing that great work on advocating for native plants in the country. And we hope this inspires some of our viewers locally to maybe engage with their communities and plant more natives to support birds and people.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks y'all. Okay, so here we are in April, we're in the middle of spring, and that not only means plants, but it also provides lots of opportunities for people to see and to photograph birds. At Audubon, we like to say the most important rule for bird photography is do no harm. It's sort of our Hippocratic oath. So to chat about this important topic, we're excited to welcome to the show a panel of experts. First up, we have Melissa Groo, who is a wildlife photographer, writer, and conservationist with a passion for educating people about the marvels of the natural world. And she's also a previous judge of our Audubon Photography Awards. And I've been privileged to be on the jury with her for a couple years. And she's a fantastic colleague and always brings that ethical eye, which is really critical to the judging. We also have Faraaz Abdool. He is a conservation and wildlife photographer from Trinidad and Tobago who specializes in birds and the issues they face worldwide. And finally, we have Liron Gertsman is a nature photographer who uses photos to educate on the importance of preserving the natural world. And he took home the Youth Prize in the 2018 Audubon Photo Awards. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You. It's great
So
to be
great to be here.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. So Melissa, let's start off with you. You're one of the leading voices in talking about the importance of ethical wildlife photography, and you've also shared a lot of your pieces on Audubon's website as well. So can you talk a little bit about why it's so important to keep these ethical guidelines in mind?
Sure. So it's a sort of a confluence of things, I think, that makes ethics in bird photography so important. And part of it is that digital photography and advancements in digital photography have really helped bird photography to explode in popularity over the last few years. And as we all know, birding has really exploded in popularity, and a lot of birders go out with cameras, and we have a lot of tools at our disposal too. You know, we have eBird, and we have instant messaging, and we have social media, and so many ways that we're able to very quickly locate birds and very quickly be there en masse. And so at the same time, you know, that's a wonderful thing. And I'm super excited that people have really gotten into bird photography. At the same time, birds are facing so many threats, as we all know. You know, we've lost 30% of our birds in North America over the last 50 years. I think it's about 3 billion birds. And so with birds facing so many threats, it really becomes incumbent on us as photographers when we're out there, particularly if there are more than one of us at a particular bird, because there's a particularly charismatic bird, or, you know, an owl that on social media, everybody's going to the nest site or what have you. And so there's actually sort of best practices. There's actually Kenn Kaufman and I created Audubon's ethical guidelines to bird photography. And we really very carefully thought through it, and we worked with other people who kept adding to it. And so I think that's a really great resource. But there are best practices that we can bring into the field with us that I think are as important as our camera settings. And really it is about first, do no harm. And ethical bird photography is really simply about putting the welfare of the bird first over the picture. Yeah. So I'm sorry if that was long-winded, but yeah.
No, that was great. Thanks, Melissa. And I think that when many of us that aren't necessarily photographers look at these amazing photos, we don't often consider the risks that may be involved for wildlife in taking the photos. What is something that viewers should consider when going out to photograph birds? And Liron, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question, John. You know, when we're out in nature, it is pretty inevitable that we are going to have some kind of impact on the birds and animals that we encounter. And in the case of birds, pretty much everything that they're doing, you know, building nests, finding food, resting, it's all important to their well-being. And the human presence has the potential to increase stress, and that's really what we want to minimize. So in minimizing it, one of the strategies that I find is really good to monitor the impact that we're having on the birds is just watching for their behaviors and having an understanding of what behaviors are good things to see that indicate that we're not having much of an impact, or behaviors that indicate that maybe, you know, we're too close and we are having an impact. So what you're really looking for are those natural, relaxed behaviors, things that birds do normally all the time, like feeding, preening, if you're lucky, something like courtship behaviors. But if you're seeing birds that are running away from you or flying away from you or standing really alert, or in some cases, you know, crouching down low to the ground, those are signs that that you might be having an impact on their presence, and those are things to watch for. And the other thing that I'd add here is that as a bird photographer is really those natural behaviors that are the most exciting and best to photograph. And having an understanding of those behaviors is really good to help improve your photographs and capture those fleeting moments. This picture here is a Western sandpiper, and a lot of birds, what they do is after they bathe, is they'll flap their wings and shoot water all around into the air like you see here. So having an understanding of the natural behaviors doesn't only help us reduce our impacts, but it also helps us get those quick moments.
Yeah, thank you for those tips, Liron. And that's an amazing photo. Every time I look at it, awestruck. So it is almost May and nesting season has already started. And that's a time when birds are especially vulnerable. So Melissa, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what are some extra considerations that people should take during this time?
Sure. Yeah. You know, the nesting time for birds and the time for having and raising young for any animal is really the most vulnerable stage of their life. You know, it's how they continue the line. And so we have to bring sort of an extra sensibility when we're out there. This is showing a picture in New Jersey of this staked off area that's a piping plover and least tern nesting area. And you'll often see this on beaches. And within this area, you have just basically nest scrapes. You know, this is where they're having their young. These shorebirds, these seabirds are coming here to the beach that they have to share with us. And there are so many threats from dogs on the loose to aerial and land predators of all kinds. And so they're eking out this rough existence right there among us. And we have to be extra careful that we're not introducing additional stressors, you know, that we're not flushing a parent off the nest, because you know, even just with the elements, like too much sun can kill a chick, or if a chick gets too cold, or if a parent's flushed off the nest and a crow or a gull swoops in and takes a chick or an egg. These things really do happen, and they happen in the blink of an eye. And so we really have to be so super careful that we're not flushing the parents, that we're not keeping the family from feeding. You know, these are piping plovers. This is a piping plover family near the nest, and they need to go down to the water line to feed. And so if we're in between them and the water line, you know, there's so much that I've learned. There are mistakes that I made as a beginning photographer, but things that I know now, because I've studied these animals and their natural history, I know that I don't want to get in the way of them going down to the water to forage along the shoreline there for the food that they need. That's so important for them to grow. And these birds, they can't fly away. I mean, the parents can fly away, but the young can't fly for a whole month. I mean, look at this chick, so vulnerable, you know, trying to blend in. And so we just always want to be super careful, whatever kind of nest we're near, that we're not keeping the parents away from the nest, or we're not sort of creating a trail for predators, or, you know, not cutting away vegetation that may be very important to shield the nest and the chicks from the elements or from predators. And so there's just sort of this extra level of care and caution that we really need to build into our practice when we're out in the field, because we really want to support the welfare of these birds. So yeah, nesting season is a particularly sensitive time, and I think we just have to be careful when we're out there and do everything we can to support a successful nesting experience.
Absolutely. I mean, the do no harm, particularly during that really critical portion of their life cycle, is paramount, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Melissa. Faraaz, not surprisingly, we're getting a lot of people in the comments who follow you on social media. And for those of you in the audience who don't, you should, because Faraaz is an amazing photographer. We've seen that you have a hummingbird who's nested in your yard, and you've been taking photos of the family. Can you share what things you consider when you're taking and sharing photos?
Yeah, so first and foremost, for this particular situation, it's her well-being, right? So it's not only with shorebirds, as Melissa was talking about, but with all birds. We really have to think about what are their priorities when they're nesting, right? So what I did for this particular situation, I learned her routine first of all. So I know that every 20 minutes she would feed and she would return to the nest for some time. So I had to time that, right? And where the nest is located now, it's like between a step and a porch. So it was like actually on a major thoroughfare in our house. So I had to like peep around the corner to make sure that she was there, or if she wasn't there. And so when I had to take this picture, I waited. I came down early in the morning, and when she left for her first feeding, I scooted across the porch and went to the other side of it, and I sat behind a table and I crouched down. And I waited for that length of time, about 20 minutes, and I figured, well, if she does not come back in this 20 minutes, I'm going to leave. And but she did come back, because I mean, she's very, very accustomed with us at home here. And I took the picture, and when she left again, I removed myself from the situation. So, you know, like that's in, and of course, in photographing this bird and documenting the nest, I try to make it very, very apparent on social media that these are all of the considerations that I'm taking, and we should always be considerate of what we are photographing.
So thanks Faraaz for that. Just to follow up, a lot of people think that to get good photos of birds, you have to get really close, but that's not always the case, and it's not always good for birds, right? So Faraaz, you often share really beautiful zoomed out photos of birds in their habitats. Can you talk more about why that perspective is important as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that the most important aspect of including habitat in my frames is to draw attention to the habitat itself. So you know, you cannot have the birds if you don't have the habitat, because habitat loss is just this whole huge driver of extinction everywhere, right? And you know, a bird on a lovely perch with a nice clean background, it's nice, and it's but it has its place. What I also like in my habitat pictures, such as this one here with the pygmy falcon, is that it shows a sense of scale. And a lot of times with including habitat, you can tell a little bit more of a story. So if there was a like more zoomed in picture of this particular bird, we may not really get to appreciate its absolute tiny size. This bird is just about 8 inches long. And so we can only really figure out that this bird is really tiny by looking at the very thin branches that it's on, right? Furthermore, I think that, well, personally, I think that everything natural is beautiful. So the branches, the leaves, the light, I love everything about it. So I try to really capture as much of that as possible. And with also a goal of communicating the message of that interconnectedness of all life, that everything is so closely intertwined and all of that sort of thing. And finally, I think the last reason that I like to share these pictures, because especially on social media, Instagram and the algorithm glorifies these amazing close-up images of birds and portraits and that. But in sharing habitat pictures, it kind of opens up the field for people who may not have access to super telephoto lenses, and it shows them that yes, it is possible to make really nice pictures of birds. You can include the habitat. You don't necessarily need a huge lens or anything like that to get all up in the bird's face, as we say.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Faraaz. And we talked about your Instagram account before, so I think that's a good segue into social media. And Melissa, I know you have a few thoughts on why it's important to talk about photography ethics when sharing photos and videos over some social media platforms. So could you go a little into that as well?
Sure. And we're sharing the link on that article that I wrote recently for Audubon, right? I think it's called Tips for Being a Responsible Bird Photographer in the Social Media Age. So I think, you know, I really thought through that carefully so that I think people could reference that if they really want to see sort of a detailed explanation of that. But, you know, just like there's best practices for our photography when we're there in person, there's also best practices for us when we're using social media in particular to share our photos. And when photos can be seen by anyone in an instant, the effects of sharing the location of a bird or of a habitat can be can be pretty large. And, you know, we have social media, we have instant messaging, eBird, GPS locating. And so there's a real responsibility that we bear, because if we're going to be sharing exact locations on social media, we might be introducing stress to either the bird, the people that live near the bird, the habitat of the bird. So we really have to think carefully, do we want to invite that? And is there a way that we can delay the posting of that photo until the bird is gone or nesting season is over? We can strip the location data off of the photo, because that's carried a lot in the metadata of the photo. And I do talk about how to do that in the article. And we can be vague in our captioning. You know, we can sort of give the general area rather than the very specific location if we're worried about a bird, and especially a nesting bird. And we can also be a good example. You know, I think Faraaz put it so beautifully when he said that he talks through in his captions about, you know, how he photographed something and that he took these special steps. And that's something that we can all do. We can be a good example, and we can help educate others about the natural history of a particular species, you know, that may be particularly sensitive to our presence. And so, you know, I think there's a whole lot of things that we can do on social media to really both protect and celebrate birds.
Yeah, those are some great suggestions, Melissa. Thank you for sharing those. So we have time for one more question, though I know we could talk about this for ages. So Liron, I know we've had conversations before about using photography for good. So can you share those thoughts with our viewers?
Yeah, for sure. You know, as Melissa and Faraaz alluded, social media is a very powerful tool. And also, as was alluded, a lot of birds are in threatened situations where they're at risk. You know, as photographers, we're really lucky that we can go out and experience the amazing things that we do experience in nature. And we have to consider that these things that we're photographing aren't necessarily things that everyone has a chance to see. And also when we're out there, there's kind of this inevitability that we are sometimes going to have an impact on the birds. Birds are very aware of their surroundings, and they do often notice photographers taking pictures. So as photographers in the field, we have a duty to be both good stewards out in the field, and then to go and use the photos that we take to advocate for the birds. You know, they don't have a direct voice in communicating the threats that they're facing. So pictured here, these are a couple sharp-tailed grouse on a traditional displaying ground known as the lek. And in my part of the world here in southwestern Canada, sharp-tailed grouse populations have really substantially declined, mostly due to habitat loss in their grassland habitat. So in order to do something about this, you know, if people are gonna love, respect, and want to protect birds, they often need to know about them and see them. And I think that social media is a very powerful tool to do this. If I can share these birds with the world and tell their story. But in the case of the sharp-tailed grouse, they're also very sensitive to disturbance. So when I'm photographing them, I have to be really careful that I'm not having any kind of negative impact on them. And in the case of these birds, that means, you know, arriving in complete darkness at night and using a blind in the appropriate location to get the chance to photograph these birds without disrupting their behaviors, and then leaving only once all the birds have left the scene. So like I said, I think that if people want to protect something, they really need to see it. And now more than ever before, with the power of social media, we can use our photos for good and share these important conservation messages with the world.
It's amazing, Liron. Thank you for that. And thank the three of you so much. This has been such an incredibly valuable discussion. And so really appreciate you sharing your expertise and thoughts with the audience. So thanks so much. We will drop the link. I think we already did, but we'll drop the photography ethics guide in the comments for folks that want to access that too.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you all. Happy birding and happy ethical photographing. So at Audubon, we clearly love to celebrate the best of bird photography, But we also know that not every single bird photo is something you necessarily want to show your friends, or maybe you would. And in fact, some of those photos can actually be the worst. And I can say for myself, I have my fair share of those photos in my phone. And that's why we love the worst bird pic hashtag, which was popularized by Carl Meckham, AKA the Inept Birder on Twitter. So Carl and Bird Twitter leaned into this concept of sharing our best worst bird pics, including the ones that were nearly perfect all the way to the ones that are completely blurry. And we swear are birds, even though people might say otherwise. So because even our bad photos can remind us of a great time in a special birding place, we decided to welcome on another worst bird pic segment. And we've asked you all to share your best of the worst bird photos. And we've invited our panel of experts again, including field editor for Audubon Magazine, Kenn Kaufman, and Bergen County Audubon Society volunteer and senior editor for Popular Science, Purbita Saha, and of course, our new co-host, John Rowden. So welcome everybody. Welcome back to another round of Stump the Expert.
Well, I would say that it's great to be here, but anyway, we'll see after we see the photos.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So am I. I'm personally relieved that I am not on the guessing end of this. So we're gonna pull up some of our favorite worst bird pics now, and we'll see if you can ID them. And yeah, why don't we look at the first one? And Purbita, why don't we start with you? As a reminder, we can phone a friend for help if you so desire.
I can't see anything. Oh God.
Is there even a bird?
I think that, can we help her?
Yes, you can definitely help.
Wait. Okay, I have a guess. It looks like the coloration of a stilt, but I don't know if the habitat is quite right. I've never seen a stilt in such marshy habitat. Okay, now I could use help. Maybe I'm not even looking at the right thing.
I actually was thinking stilt too, Purbita.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
But I don't, but to your point, I don't see that there's a lot of exposed flat or anything on that, but I don't know.
Well, they do have long legs, so they can wade in marshy spots like that. I'm not seeing the legs.
Yeah.
I see though the color of the wing. It looks like that blackish reflection on the wing and white on the rump that would fit with black-necked stilt.
Yeah.
But so that seems plausible.
So is the final consensus the stilt?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's
Sure.
see. Let's see the answer.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
In flight.
Excellent.
Interesting.
Well done.
Yeah, good job, Purbita, and everyone else who helped. And I see our viewers are following along as well. Definitely feel free to enter in your guesses while we stump the experts. So, Kenn, why don't we go to you next to see the second photo?
That's a tree. That's
a native tree.
We'll guess.
Okay, is there a bird there in the upper left on the trunk? If so, the little bit that I can see there, it looks like there's a brown tail sort of sticking down and maybe the tips of wings. And I think that if there could be a head that's up out of the picture. So it could be a brown creeper. It also could be, not a bird at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brown creepers have a pretty unique tail position compared to any other species of bird?
Yeah, usually their tails look a little bit more reddish brown than that, but it could be the lighting.
And it does seem like behaviorally that would be a brown creeper kind of pose.
Mhm.
So,
Seems
with
like
you on that.
a lot of people are guessing correctly on Zoom.
So you're saying we're correct.
Well,
Yeah,
let's see.
that's right.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, brown creeper.
Very cool.
Good job to the experts and the commenters. That was a good one. All right.
Excellent.
We have more photos lined up. So let's see. Let's see the third one. And John, I'm going to go to you for this.
All right. Are you kidding me? So I see yellow. And I see a lot of water. So it looks like a bathing, I mean, the yellow is kind of ubiquitous across it, although it looks like I see some gray as well. I don't know if I'm seeing anything on the top of the head though.
Where's the head?
Yeah, I think the head is over to the right-hand side. I'm gonna go out on a limb, no pun intended, although since there's no limb in the picture, lesser goldfinch? I don't know. What do y'all think? It just struck me somehow. Like, and maybe it's this sort of coloration. It could obviously be, if it was a goldfinch, could be an American as well, but lesser.
Yeah, the yellow green made me think of female painted bunting, but they wouldn't have brown wings like that, right? It would be yellow green
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah. I'm not sure I actually see the wings, but if that's the tail at the left,
Yeah.
it looks like the tail is too long for a goldfinch. But just a guess.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, I officially don't know.
I'm not sure where the tail kind of ends there, actually.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a good question too.
But I don't, yeah.
It's a cocktail.
All right, well, let's see. Let's see what the real answer is.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Wow.
Well, congratulations, John. That's great.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm impressed. And a lot of people
Legendary.
are also impressed at how you all experts are getting these correctly.
I guess that's obvious, according to the photographer.
Right.
Yeah, very obvious. All right, let's see the next one. Whose turn are we on? Purbita?
Yeah, I think. Okay, seeing a lot of wing here, some blue-green iridescence, and water. So I'll go with, I think it's a tree swallow. I don't think it's green enough to be a violet green swallow, which is not very native to the East Coast, so I'm not as familiar with them. So I could tap in John and Kenn here.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right about the color, and I think if it were a violet green, we'd see more white on the bird too.
Mm.
So I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Purbita, as well.
All right, let's see the answer.
Okay.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
job.
We're all so fast.
Yay.
Excellent.
This one's for Elizabeth. Tree swallow is her favorite bird.
It is her favorite.
Yes. Shout out to Elizabeth Sorrell. All right, let's see the next one. I think Kenn, you're up now.
Okay. Huh. Well, if I were looking at this on my computer, I would zoom in. It's an owl. I don't suppose you can actually zoom in the photo here, can you?
Is that cheating? I think it would be.
No, it's not.
There's
It's
no
looking for
cheating
more
in
details.
this.
There's no rules in this.
Like using binoculars.
Exactly.
Yeah, Well, I've got them here, but they're not helping.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clearly one of the larger owls. And I think just based on what I can see here, well, I would say I would want to blow it up and look at it larger, but I'd say either barred owl or great horned owl.
It's a good guess. All right, let's see if it is.
I like Bart. Nice.
Barred owl, yeah.
Okay. That's good.
Nice.
Very Twin Peaks trippy.
Yeah, truly. You're all doing so well. All right, no pressure. Let's see what the next one is.
Oh yeah, get it, John.
Yeah, John, you're up.
What is happening?
Good question.
I don't.
UFO.
I can't even see what it's doing. Well, it's on. Is it perched or is it flying? Even it looks like a little projectile that's kind of shooting up there.
Looks like it's just taking off.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know. I really, really wish I had a zoom capability because I'm not getting any characteristics off of it.
What colors do you see?
Great.
Or is this
Gray.
Great.
I think I see a little red on the head, on the back of the head, maybe. Black on the tail.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you all think?
I think it's looking at the scale, it looks like a larger bird. So I'd say like a woodpecker, like a red-bellied or a flicker maybe. Although, yeah.
Okay.
That seems reasonable. I don't see enough contrast for red-headed woodpecker, but
And
I don't know if it's perched or flying, and so that's sort of a basic question.
It looks like one of those angry birds from the video
Yeah.
game.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's it.
Hey, it's an angry bird.
All right, let's see what it is. The moment of truth.
And nuttles.
No.
Okay,
Dang.
What is a woodpecker?
that's plausible.
It
Yeah.
is. I'm still not seeing that though on the back. But it's
John is not convinced.
no. I'll take your word for it.
All right, good guesses, everyone. I think we have. Let's see what the next one is.
That's not fair.
Save the best for last, you know.
That is clearly a turkey. Isn't it?
How are you getting? What's giving you these clues?
I'm seeing it in the grass. I'm seeing a kind of an erect bird that has this kind of triangular shape, and I think that it has a kind of a little head and a robust body. And I have no other basis for that guess.
All right.
What do y'all think?
Counterpoint.
Okay.
Burrowing owl. Would they be in grass though? Probably not.
Is that grass?
Yeah.
I think so.
I mean, this could be a much smaller bird than a turkey facing to the left, with its tail sticking up in the air and its head off to the left side. Could be like a McGillivray's warbler or something.
Right. It's also not really great habitat, but I get a roadrunner too.
A roadrunner, a grass runner.
Right, like a roadrunner, and there's like actually a tail sticking up, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be a cassowary.
That would be exciting.
Yeah.
All good guesses, all good guesses. So what is the final group consensus?
A leucistic Middendorf's grasshopper warbler.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. All right, let's see what it is.
Oh,
Turkey.
Oh, right.
wow.
Well, John, I gotta hand it to you. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is quite good.
You
I've
didn't
actually
nail
seen
that it
more
was an
Roadrunner
Eastern
now,
wild
actually,
turkey,
that
though.
I wish, but.
Well, that was super fun. Thank you, all of you, for joining, and thank you to our viewers who also joined in this game. You three are truly experts, and it's always fun to do another Stump the Experts. I know this is one of my favorite segments, and a lot of our viewers enjoy it every time we do it as well. So thanks for joining us again, Kenn and Purbita.
Yeah,
Oh, thanks for having us.
good first round, John.
We made it.
You did so well. So, as we always like to do at the end of the show, we like to turn to one thing that you as viewers can do to help birds from the comfort of your own homes. So April 20th, which wasn't too long ago, marked the anniversary of the largest environmental disaster in US waters. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill happened in 2010, and the communities and wildlife surrounding the Gulf of Mexico are still recovering to this day. So along with pouring nearly 5 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill also resulted in the tragic deaths of 11 people and as many as 1 million birds. But there is hope because now we have a chance to restore some of this damaged habitat in Louisiana's Barataria Basin. And this is something that will be beneficial for both birds and people. So this month, we're asking you to join us in submitting a public comment to support the single largest ecosystem restoration project in the history of the United States. And we'll drop a link for you to do that in the comments. And as you can see, it's super easy. We have a form that you just fill out and submit straight away. So with that being said, thank you everybody for tuning in today. And John, thank you to my new favorite co-host for joining us.
Thanks, Christine. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy. I'm super psyched to be doing this with you. And thanks to everybody who's been so welcoming. And thanks to Purbita and Kenn for helping through with the worst bird picks. And that was great. We'll see you all next month.